Welcome to Part 1 of Banner Systems Training for the Financial Aid Office at Indiana State University. This training was developed to give a general overview of how Banner is used to automate our operations and can be used to troubleshoot student accounts. Now, to give this rather dry subject a bit of energy, I'm going to narrate alongside a soundtrack. And in case you're a person who prefers to read this stuff instead of watch it, the Banner user documents are stored on the L drive under Academic Affairs, Office of Information Technology, BDoc 8. Banner is an enterprise-wide student information database. That means every electronic record is a combination of hundreds of different attributes that make each file unique. Banner Financial Aid uses 5 steps to deliver financial aid to a student. We'll go through each of these steps in more detail during this presentation. With the exception of the data load, all of these steps take place during nightly automated jobs. This means while you're sleeping, Banner is taking thousands of lines of code and going to work. The systems team uses a program called EdConnect to draw down information from the FAFSA database into Banner. We run the common matching process, also known as suspense, to attach the data from a FAFSA onto a student's admissions application. Only, this data doesn't look like a paper FAFSA anymore. It's now called an ISER, or Institutional Student Information Record, and it houses over 100 different data points, just like the ones you see here. When the data load happens, a ROASTAT record is created, and processing can begin. All of the financially related data fields from the ISER load onto the applicant processing and need analysis forms. Need analysis calculates the EFC. If this is a subsequent transaction, it can require manual override. If it's approved for auto loading, the student record goes to step 2, grouping. Think of grouping like a massive interstate. An aerial shot of the traffic may look like chaos, but add in some instructions, and suddenly the drivers can get to where they need to go. The roads now eventually lead to the correct final destination. The first set of grouping is tracking, or are there factors about the application that require the student to submit additional information? At ISU, we use tracking to define our verification groups. Now, quick quiz question. On which Banner form can you see information about a student's missing verification documents? If you guessed A, you're right. After a file passes through tracking, it's narrowed down even further into budgeting. Budgeting uses information about the FAFSA to determine a student's cost of attendance, which represents the maximum amount of aid a student may receive. You might be surprised to hear that we use over 100 budget groups. Some are easy to identify. But in some cases, a student's aid limit might actually be 0. Assigning these attributes during budgeting allows the student to activate their portal and see what might be preventing their aid. So it's important that they go through this step. Now, which form would you use to see what type of budget a student has? The answer is B. If the student is in an eligible budget group, their next step is packaging. We use packaging to assign funds based on cohort. Here's the tricky quiz question. Which Banner form would you use to figure out a student's class year? The answer is B, although there are lots of places in the student section of Banner that you can look as well. As a reference point, think of the presidential scholarship amounts for the last 3 years. The amount per student is based on cohort data. Packaging helps us determine which amount belongs to which student. We're done with grouping. Now on to the fun part, awarding. Who here can guess which Banner form is used to assign funds? Yeah, it should be pretty obvious. This one is easy. After funds are assigned, we run edits to make sure the people who got the awards are actually eligible for them. You might have heard these referred to as POP cells, but that stands for population selections. That is, defining a population based on its attributes. An example might be the Daily Over Award report, assigning a SAP appeal document to someone, after the mid-year review of course, or running the Pell overpayment report from COD. There are lots of examples of population selections that run either overnight or through manual processes. After edits are assigned, the awards are put in the queue for disbursement. This process looks to see whether there are outstanding requirements for the awards that were assigned. These are based on any number of rules, even some that are user-defined, like on ROSDF or in an outside module, like admissions. You can look at all sorts of places to review a student file for disbursement criteria, but the best place to see why a disbursement didn't run is on Roar Rule. So at this point, you should have a pretty good idea of what the nightly jobs do. So what else can I give you in the last 30 seconds of this presentation? Ah, yes. How about an explanation of why our forms have such weird naming conventions? The first letter stands for the module and banner that you're looking at. Stay tuned for part 2 of the training, and I'll tell you how to read the other 7 letters. Thanks for listening.